Welcome to our REGI infrastructure study rollout. REGI exists today because 22 persons who love this community and care about its future came together through the leadership, financial support, and commitment of Encourage Community Foundation. I would like to recognize those 22 persons, and if you're here, please feel free to stand up. Gus Van Kussel was our facilitator. Jeff Burton, Airco Worldwide, he's in the back of the room. Rick Burdan, Encourage. Kirk Willard, Ocean Spray. Kelly Ryan, Encourage. Jenny Riggenbach, sitting up here making sure we keep our technology going, Encourage. Melissa Reichert, Heart of Wisconsin. Matt Zacher, Express Recycling. John Higgs from Midstate. Al Jaworski, also from Midstate. Pat Arndt from the Pat Arndt Logs. Renee Daniels from the North Central Workforce Development Board. Mary Jo Carson, former mayor of Wisconsin Rapids. Jason Grunenberg, Wood County. Mary Ironside, Wood Trust Bank. Tom Yonke from Corinzo. And Chelsea Mazurek, also from Encourage. I would suggest a round of applause for those folks. They are all volunteers. Their objective, which was established by the group, was that our region has a healthy, growing, and resilient economy in which all people and businesses thrive. Encourage made the largest grant in its history in the amount of $200,000 and cultivated further investments from a few donors. These investments leverage investments of your taxpayer investments, which have been $69,000 to date. They are from Wood County, Wisconsin Rapids, Nakusa, Port Edwards, Buren, Town of Grand Rapids, Town of Rome, Vesper, and Pittsville. And we hope soon to be joined by other towns and villages in this area. Many other organizations and individuals, as well as businesses, have invested. Wood Trust, Express Recycling, Corinso North America, the North Central Workforce Development Board, plus members of the current board. And those folks are on the screen in front of you. So I'm not going to relist their names, but these are the folks that are now members of the current board of REGI. So those are your go-to folks if you have REGI issues and opportunities, and we're looking for the opportunities. The stage was set for our work. Vital signs portrayed a citizenry with declining economic prospects. The Encourage Community Survey screamed loudly of a desire for economic growth and jobs. Citizens committed to change. And we also have citizens that hold the capacity to meet those challenges. A future work study gave us a pattern that has demonstrated success in other locales. REGI evolved under the leadership of Gus Mancuso. Gus has been a principal at 2 of our community high schools and has been a coach and community volunteer extraordinaire. Gus has been a catalyst, developing team leadership and fostering adaptive leadership skills in our community. Gus, please lead us through the REGI Foundation journey.
And I want to just lay out a little bit of the backstory associated with REGI. Does everybody have this brochure that was constructed, developed by, encouraged, telling the backstory of REGI? I'm going to refer to it tonight for just a bit. And John has, to some degree, introduced it already about the backstory and setting the conditions for REGI. And I just want to highlight some of the information that is in this, and I would strongly encourage you and hope that you can take this home and read it as well. John has mentioned that the people on REGI are here and we're here because of their love for the community. My love is just like everybody else's in this room. We all have a connection to this place. I came here in 1979. 36 years later, I'm here. I consider it a gift to be in this community. And I think all of us who have lived here, whether you've lived here for a while or lived here all your life, consider it a gift to be here. So I think when I was asked to do and work with REGI through my position at Encourage, I felt it was an opportunity and really an honor and a chance to give back to the community as well. And as REGI outlines, as this brief outlines on the front end, as most of us know, in the early 2000s, probably 2000 and 2008, we lost 40% of our workforce. And certainly there was a great deal of angst. And in response to this changing economy and all of the conditions that were occurring, the impact that was felt throughout the region, Encourage supported innovative and targeted workforce and economic development solutions. Now at this time, I'd like you to just open this brochure, and you'll see a timeline that really outlines the backstory of REGI in terms of the work that many people did. John outlined it as well in the time frames from 2008 to 2011. There was a great deal of investment on the supply side. We had a number of people, obviously large numbers of people looking for jobs that were being downsized. And through the work of Encourage being a backbone, but more importantly, as John outlined, many people stepping to the plate and forming the peer council. There were a great deal of connections made with Midstate, the businesses, and the local community in general to do this workforce transformation. And then we realized in 2011 that it wasn't just good enough as a community to provide the supply chain for workers. We also had to stimulate the demand side. In other words, if we have people in the community that are still looking for jobs, how can we provide for them opportunities to work? And so at that time, there was a conscious effort to look at how we could best do that. So if you look at 2011, you'll notice, again, through the funders and through Encourage as well, there was a commission study called FutureWorks. FutureWorks came into this community in 2011 and said that to economically develop your community, there are 5 recommendations that you need to take. So if you flip over on the back page here and look at the highlighted areas, you'll see that the recommendations in August of 2011 were given to the community. 65 people or so attended. Many of you in this room were there as well, and said, this is what you need to do. You need to organize a coalition of key stakeholders. Start with your assets, manufacturing. 1 out of 5 people in this community still work in the area of manufacturing. And we have some of the greatest workers in the area of manufacturing found anywhere. So start with your assets, then form an intermediate organization to develop and implement a tightly focused plan, and then hire a highly skilled and expert, experienced economic development professional, and then focus on making something happen. So at that time, those stakeholders are brought together, as you've listed and seen on the form or on the screen tonight, and those people worked for approximately a little over 3 years working together, and it was based on trust, relationships, and I think a whole lot more in terms of being adaptable and putting the community first. And I think that that was the significant piece of it. So when you talk about the model and the plan, we then had REGI formed. We had a study committee or a recommendation committee, and that group met for over 3 years to develop what was going to be the plan, as well as to do a deep, deep study about what our assets were. And I just want to point something out, because many of you are probably asking yourself, okay, so what is different about this plan versus any of the other plans that they've worked on over the course of time? You're going to hear some of it tonight in the infrastructure study recommendations, but more importantly, the people that got together realized that there would be a new form of leadership needed for this to happen. Well, what does that mean? It means that we had to really focus on relationships and information and make different decisions that possibly were made in the past about how to do things correctly or in this new age that we were in. Because we have to do something different if we expect a different result. So instead of really concentrating on technical skills, we focused on people. And we believe that money matters, but relationships matter more. And people's voice matters. And people's input matters. Because when you allow people an opportunity to talk and share in a safe space, you're going to get the best answers possible rather than 1 or 2 institutions making all the decisions. So over the course of 3 years, people realized that by working together. We also involved a new form of leadership by inviting people and realizing into this discussion and others, and realized that we had to be dependent upon each other. That it wasn't going to be one institution or one part or one city or one municipality that was going to do it. We also realized very quickly that if we're going to do something differently that matters, we've got to cooperate rather than compete in a regional fashion. We also know that instead of just finding out how can we gain an advantage over one area versus another, we had to really decide what our true purpose was. And I think our true purpose is to make Wisconsin Rapids and Southwood County a great place to live, where people can find family-sustaining jobs and enjoy the quality of life that we have. We also realized that the best decisions come from people working together, struggling with complex issues. Because if this was so easy, the thousands and thousands of communities across the country would have already had the answer. Every answer is unique. Every answer is based on what the community assets are. We cannot go in and replicate something that somebody else has done necessarily, because our assets are different. So we decided and realized very quickly that that's what we had to do. So the new form of leadership is really about, instead of being separate parts, institutions, organizations, the metaphor is really connected parts. So tonight, you're going to hopefully see that whatever is being discussed that Diane mentions is something about being connected and having a regional approach to what is happening here. Taking our assets, and then as importantly, knowing where our gaps are and deciding what we need to do. Because we're really in a time that's called a gap. We're no longer 2000 before. We are now looking at in 1973, September 19th, she played Bobby Rigby and for the Battle of the Sexes in tennis, for those of you that can remember that. And that came a year after Title IX, 1972, for those of you that can remember that as well, or even lived through it. 1972, the federal law was passed that in sports and athletics and public institutions that you had to give equal amounts of money. And so the story that she tells is the fact that she took that on because she felt that we all stand on the generations that come before us. And in this community, we stand on the generations that made us who we are, the 100 years of paper makers. And so now we have a choice as a community to decide what will we do as a community to make our community better for generations to come, for people that we will never know in a time that we will never see. Just like the people in the early 1900s and late 1800s had the same vision. They were trying to make this place better for the future. So with that, I want to thank you on behalf of my role. Again, I consider it a real opportunity and a real gift to be a part of this community. And I thank the people on the committee that had the trust and faith that we could do something positive. And I'm really, really excited about the future. And I know that by people pulling together regionally across the grain, good things are going to happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gus. The foundation that was established by this group allowed us then to proceed to become a nonprofit corporation. We hired a legal advisor. We developed governance documents. Those were vetted. Articles of incorporation were drafted, and we were formed as a 501c3. The IRS has approved and granted us tax exemption. So we moved from organizing to a formal board operation. The next step was to sponsor an infrastructure study. We were able to obtain a $50,000 WEDC capacity building grant to help support that. The regional infrastructure study will be presented this evening. This study is expected to be a model for other regions. Diane Lupke will present our infrastructure study. Diane has more than 30 years of experience, 20 years as president of Diane Lupke and Associates. Her work focuses on the identification of unique assets and opportunities on which a community can build, grow, and sustain itself over time, and the financial organizational structures to support that activity. Ms. Lupke has special expertise in working with distressed communities and emerging markets, in particular, sub-economic regions and microclusters. In economic development speak, that describes who we are. Ms. Lupke also has written legislation to create seed and venture capital funds. Competitive assets analysis is part of her work, industrial policy design, workforce development, strategic planning, and neighborhood market analysis. She's been an active member of the International Economic Development Council and was given their Award of Excellence in 2012. She previously served on its board of directors. It has been our pleasure to work with Diane. She is a true professional. And please welcome Diane.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to hear our presentation. It is truly my pleasure to be here with you to introduce the work my colleagues and I did for the Regional Economic Growth Initiative and its 16 investor communities. My firm, Diane Associates, and my partner firm, Schotten Associates, are inclusive of the titles economist, market analyst, banker, journalist, engineer, planner, and site selector. The skills these titles represent, when taken together, are economic development. You may have heard a number of different kinds of definitions of economic development. But at its essence, economic development is about wealth. It's about building the wealth of a community to sustain itself, its businesses and its residents, now and into the future as a place people choose to live, to raise a family, and to grow a business. The purpose of our engagement with REGI was to assess your ability as a community to attract investment and support economic growth, and to compare then that ability with your peers across the country. 2? Thanks. At the end of our brief time together, my goal is to leave you with answers to each of these questions. First, what we did and the process we followed. Secondly, what we found as a result of that process. Thirdly, what we identified as assets or potential building blocks for your long-term sustainable growth. Then, what circumstances, conditions, or attitudes we found that in our estimation will undermine your work. Then, on the bright side, what opportunities do we see for potential competitive advantage? And finally, a few recommendations that we will leave you with for immediate action as well as long-term growth. 3. Our firm followed processes that are standard best practice in the industry. But we make 2 additions to that best practice. We look specifically for the assets and the conditions that support innovation. We use innovation as a proxy for potential for revitalization and long-term sustainable growth. Secondly, we also take one more step to view your community from the perspective of a site selector. That looks at your community through a very critical lens. And the question is, are you ready today to accommodate the immediate needs and particular demands of a new business investor? Okay? The study followed an in-depth 5-step process. It was proposed and conducted wholly by the consultants. We speak directly to businesses, government, community leaders, farmers, individual investors, all in one-on-one interviews, and then small group discussions as well. These 48 interviews, large and small, focus groups, a bankers forum, education forum, and other sessions represent the most widespread in-person survey of local stakeholders we've conducted in our 25-year history. Our analysis is detailed and rigorous. We consider 15 key data points of economic information from standard federal, state, and local sources, such as the United States Census and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We look at trends in concentrations of employment, concentrations of occupations, and importantly, we use a proprietary index that combines both public sources and private sources of data that are associated with higher levels of innovation. For example, we're talking about educational attainment, business starts, patents, and venture capital. Third, we gather information about local assets, as a site selector might. We look online, we look in publications that are available readily, various documents, and we also do a visual assessment of any, just as any business visitor might encounter your community. Those 3 pieces, as you see on the screen, those 3 pieces feed into a benchmark comparison in which we look at your common competitors for business investment and consider points of attraction, those points in which you would compete well. And then we also look at those things that would eliminate you from competition, such as availability of workers with certain skills and the immediate access to an interstate. Finally, we combine the interviews, data, assets, and benchmarks into a summary assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of your area, the opportunities for development, and the threats to your success. The resulting SWOT is a powerful indicator, and it allows you to make informed decisions regarding immediate and longer-term investments. It's notable that the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation asked us to document the process used by our firm in a handbook, and that handbook is now available to other communities as a model process. Fine. Throughout the process, the consultants provided periodic updates documenting the discoveries, common themes, unique factors, and potential opportunities existent in the 16 investor communities. Just as anyone visiting your community, consultants and site selectors have prior knowledge. And importantly, we have knowledge of communities that are outside the state and overseas. We bring all of that to bear as we arrange what we've learned into what we term key findings. It's important to note that our impressions may not match yours. We cannot know what you know, we cannot feel what you feel, we cannot experience the community the way that you experience the community. But at the same time, even if our judgments are, in your view, harsh or even perhaps incorrect, we came to those judgments using the data sources and processes that others will use to judge your community. There are 8 things that we see as contributors to your current condition and your future prospects. As you likely suspected, manufacturing, agriculture, and healthcare are the industries that drive your economy. As economic drivers, an economic driver is industry activity that attracts additional investment and thus adds to your economy rather than simply recirculating resources within that economy. Manufacturing, agriculture, and more recently healthcare have been successful long-term drivers of the economy, and there's little experience here, as in most of Wisconsin, with the starting and growing of a business or entrepreneurship. Again, similar to many other areas in Wisconsin, your population is aging and shrinking. This means that in addition to competing for businesses and jobs, you have to also compete for new residents and for workers to maintain your current level of population and the population mix. Your workforce is an asset. It's high value, it's well-trained, and dedicated. In fact, some individuals have skills that are nationally and internationally competitive. Your graduation rates reflect a high-value basic manufacturing workforce. High school graduation rates are among the highest in the nation. 2-year degrees are above average, but again, noting the length and the stability of your manufacturing backbone, 4-year college degrees are well below average. In fact, they're among the lowest in the country. This is a conservative place. You're not big spenders. Some of you may lack disposable income, while others choose not to spend it locally. Consumer spending often leads a robust economy. Tourism can make up this gap in spending, but despite an active and growing tourist economy, much of the spending is not being captured locally. Still, your financial profile is surprisingly strong. A remarkable level of philanthropic activity, high level of bonding capacity due to prudent investments, and available debt and equity capital. 7. One of the things that we look at and look for are the assets within a community that are so strong that they can support others. We call them building blocks. They likely are already foundational elements of your economy. We also look for, in addition to those key foundational elements, we also look for outliers, unusual concentrations, unique features, or elements with international reach or potential. These things may not be the boulders or the slabs of your foundation, or even a keystone, just to belabor that architectural metaphor. Still, they provide unique shape. They're unusual, and they're things that can draw new investment to your community. we examined your industrial, human, physical, civic, cultural infrastructure. So we look at infrastructure in a very broad way. And it's those things that are available to support economic development and that are there in their strength. They can also support other economic activity. Your industrial building blocks are wood pulp, paper and forest products, potatoes and cranberries, and healthcare. The depth and the breadth of these industries within the region means that there's a coincident concentration of talent and experience that those industries represent. These industries, and again their workforce, have the power to draw like businesses, enhance the value chain, and increase profits. You have foundation-level physical infrastructure. In other words, what you have is the basics, with abundant water and centrally located water treatment. And with the Solaris investment, extraordinary fiber optic capability. As in other water-abundant areas, though, this asset has been taken for granted. Recognize it for the asset that it is and employ it to drive growth in the region. The window of fiber optic advantage is quickly closing, but it remains a competitive advantage that is still attractive to investors. Your cultural vibe is largely about lifestyle. People want to live here. That was a common theme. In your civil and cultural landscape, education, recreation, finance, and leadership all stand out. The Wisconsin River runs to the center of the city, providing both recreation and industry support. For a community of any size, the scope, vision, and leadership of your local philanthropies here, in particular the Community Foundation and Courage, is truly impressive. Turning the coin, it's also important to understand those issues or conditions that are likely going to limit your potential for success. We call these undermining forces. Okay. In our view, it is these things you have to attend to if you're going to be successful in achieving your aims. The economic drivers that we spoke of earlier are each, despite their strength, at risk. As you well know, paper is a shrinking industry. You'll need to work hard to maintain market share, test new and unfamiliar markets, and discover new products for your talents and resources. Agriculture is both at one with and at odds with the environment. Achieving the proper balance while growing the sector is challenging. Healthcare is a volatile industry. Winners and losers are still being identified. It will take intention to be among the winners. Imagine an onion. Peel back the thin skin, and firmer flesh is revealed. About halfway in, the layers are thickest and strongest. At the core, you might find a little bit of green, or maybe you're going to find a little bit of brown. The economy operates in layers. Economic transactions define those layers. The collaboration of your 16 legal jurisdictions is admirable. Much may be accomplished as that collaboration becomes more robust. But at present, that collaboration is simply too limited to make you an attractive and sought-after economic partner. In addition, since the region is defined by legal jurisdiction, it fails to recognize existing economic activity. More than anything else, you're defined by your central place. Think again about the onion. A healthy core is essential to a healthy whole. Lack of concentrated assets and continued disinvestment will spoil your prospects and ultimately drag down the entire region. Your infrastructure is adequate, but as is, it limits opportunity. Unlike your peers, you have no destination-style industrial parks, no vacant industrial buildings, and you lack immediate access to an interstate. Those outstanding infrastructure assets you do have, the water and the fiber optics, lack coordination and marketing. For many years, Wisconsin has lagged behind its peers in the region in economic development infrastructure, all those things that we've been talking about tonight. More recently, state and regional organizations have developed that are shoring up some of that deficit. However, the central region, the region in which we're in now, has few economic development officials. Your former economic stability means, in other words, your very positive economic stability over time, means that your industrial leadership also lacks experience in economic development. The economic region is disconnected, and the funding that you have that is dedicated to economic development is inadequate. The scope of the work that we did as part of this contract did not allow for market or feasibility studies to measure opportunities, and that's important to keep in mind. However, when we do see convergence among assets or opportunities that could lead to success, we like to bring those to your attention. We call these synergistic opportunities. We see 5 specific areas in which we believe additional analysis will yield real opportunities for competitive advantage. 12. Tourism is growing. Venues statewide saw increased numbers of visitors and higher spending. New investments, such as the Sand Valley Golf Course in Rome, are being made locally. And despite multiple high-quality venues, the number of high-quality venues that we noticed, there is a lack of tourist infrastructure, which means that the current spending that we were already seeing is not being captured locally. That means there's opportunity. Measuring and clarifying that opportunity will be important, but the conditions are in place for significant growth. 13. Now is a volatile time in healthcare, as I mentioned. Consolidations, new ventures, investments in research and education, and simple demographics again create opportunity. Healthcare has the potential for the most immediate job gains on the part of local and regional businesses. Stronger economic collaborations will enable those job gains to occur locally. 14. We like the opportunity of the Tribune building. We look at it as a community accelerator. Much like its for-profit twin, the Business Accelerator, it has the potential to accelerate economic growth and opportunity, advance environmental sustainability, and spur creativity. It will invite new people into the downtown and excitement into economic development for the community. Similar ventures have shown promise elsewhere, and we really encourage you to give this a chance. Your central place is how you're identified to the world. It needs your investment to be the economic driver it could be. As a shared space for the region, it requires the shared investment of everyone to be successful. The Tribune building and the Supermass Park layout are good examples of the kinds of project that will make a difference. But it's important for you not to underestimate the impact and the importance of individual investments. And what I'm talking about here is those things that we all can do. We all can make in our own homes and in our businesses. Those things make a difference as well, and they're just as important. The former Port Edwards Mill site has potential. We like this one also. We especially like the synergy of your history, your talent, your experience coming together with new research, advanced products, and innovative technologies. Be prepared for a long time horizon, for fits and starts and potentially some significant risk. Still, as currently discussed as a research and development facility, it has the potential to accelerate research to commercialization, direct assistance to existing pulp, paper, feed, and food processing industries, test new bio-based technologies and products, create a stronger connection between industry and university research, and link education and training to your foundation industries. It's also one of the few available rail-served sites. So on a short-term basis, there might be opportunity for it as a rail-served site, as well as potentially reuse of the existing diesel repair facility for regional distribution services. It's a unique opportunity, and thus, as a unique opportunity, has the potential to attract more regional interest and investment. One of the best ways to accelerate this project would be with investments in research. An endowed chair in research located at the facility would create a stronger linkage between education and industry and potentially steer business development locally. I want to leave you with our summary recommendations. First, let me say that you're already bigger and stronger than you see yourselves. Your economic region defines itself through where people live, go to school, shop, work, where your businesses find customers and suppliers, and how outsiders see you. These economic transactions suggest, if you're looking geographically, these geographic economic transactions suggest a triangle, roughly defined by the areas of Marshfield, Stevens Point, and Wisconsin Rapids, but also inclusive of Rome and your 16 local jurisdictions and others within the triangle. Businesses and institutions such as Mid-State Technical College, UW Stevens Point, and UW Wood Marshfield are already serving this area and define their region in that way. Solidify those collaborations you already have in place. Recognize the existing industry connections that you have, and you're going to gain strength and vitality from a larger regional partnership that has already defined itself. Secondly, support your existing businesses, especially those in paper, pulp, wood, forest products, agriculture, and healthcare, to become more profitable and grow. Root new business activity in the area with research funding, education, and seed capital. Then highly target business attraction to fill the gaps in the value chain, such as looking at cranberry production with cranberry processing, cold storage, packaging, and distribution, all in the same place. Conduct market studies to measure that opportunity for new industrial and commercial opportunities for entrepreneurs. Third, we would suggest that you resolve your water and water treatment issues for local businesses. Don't let them linger as they have at the current impasse. Recognize and promote infrastructure that makes economic growth possible, such as the abundant water and telecommunications, specifically your fiber capacity. Fourth, make investments in your central place. It's working against you now, but the historic character, the waterfront, both of those things make it truly distinctive and could be part of the attraction to young families, to millennials, and to more seniors. The Tribune building and Supermass plan are good starts. Fifth, to support and coordinate this work, you need to look to your successful peers and create and fully fund a full-service economic development organization. The bits and pieces that you have now are beneficial, but they're scattered around the region and they're insufficient. Development success requires a solid organizational structure supported by investments from all sectors. Finally, let me be clear. We see opportunity here for businesses to flourish and to grow, and for families to choose the area as their home. If economic development is about the creation of shared wealth, then economic success is driven by shared opportunity and realized by shared responsibility. Shore up those things you've taken for granted, collaborate with your neighbors, make the investments necessary to realize your potential. I thank you very much for choosing to come out tonight. Thank you for your kind attention, and I wish you all the best that the future may bring to you. Thank you so much.
Well, now I'm going to have a test of how sharp you are. I talked about a list of 22 people, right? Anybody count them? Well, I've made some grievous errors. Zach Verwake followed Mary Jo Carson and was involved with our group extensively. Adam Tagan was part of the group throughout the process, and Joe Terry was with the group throughout the process. And I missed those three completely. So my apologies to each of the three of you, and your participation was excellent and well appreciated. Back to the program. Thank you, Diane. An excellent presentation. As you saw in her presentation, one of the key deficits for us is the capacity for economic development. If we're going to be successful, that must change. And to that end, REGI has hired a president. Steve Anderson comes to us with a great deal of experience. He's been the assistant city manager of Hazelwood, Missouri, where his primary focus was economic development. St. Louis Economic Council as vice president of business development. Cushman and Wakefield, Inc. in St. Louis, director of location incentives. He served as president and CEO of Lake County Partners in Libertyville, Illinois, and he focused on economic development. More recently, he has served as the Norfolk, Virginia director of the Department of Development. Steve is a graduate of Whittier Law and served as an attorney in his own firm and later a partnership of Anderson Group from '89 through 2000. He is admitted to the United States Supreme Court in the federal districts of California, Missouri, and DC. We are excited to have Steve on board. Please join me in a warm REGI welcome to Steve.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I know there's a game tonight, so I'll be brief. Offhand, I have to say I'm not sure what the Supreme Court has to do with economic development. I like having it on our resume. A little bit about me. We have the rough outline of what the Midwest is, of course, up here, and the reason for that is that's where I was born, that's where I was raised. I've been in many an environment and area that's been going through economic and cultural change. And the end result is that economic development is and will be my passion for the remainder of my professional days. The reason, I think I did just talk to you, probably the reason why I came here. Some of you asked me that. Some of you want to know why would I relocate and what is the purpose for my being here on a permanent basis. Honestly, it's because you have the opportunities, you have the challenges, you have the values that are necessary to get the job done. Economic development, as indicated in the report by Diane, takes a huge amount of effort and energy. It's not throwing spaghetti on the wall and see what's ready. It's getting out there and it's being strategic. I think one of the big things you've got going on here, of course, obviously, is not only the cooperation, but the fact you've got this fantastic array of organizations. So that creates a foundation that to me was attractive, be it the Encourage Foundation proper, the Chamber of the Heart of Wisconsin, the local governments, the other NGOs and entities that are out there, non-governmental organizations, but also the state itself, which is in a state of flux, if you will, for a variety of reasons. But again, having competed with Wisconsin when I was in Illinois, I believe that there is tremendous growth potential and opportunity here. I put some photographs up here, which is might be a little perplexing, but the reason I'm doing it is relatively simple. This is East St. Louis, a representation of their building stock right now. Back in the 1960s, they were a major manufacturing and economic center in the St. Louis region. That's a large region, it consists of 16 counties and over 100 cities. Brutal reality, they failed to cooperate like you were doing here. They failed to work together to identify any kind of a program and to pursue any kind of new avenues, if you will, for jobs and investment. Not as simple as that, of course, but the end result was the same. The city has effectively disappeared. They can't afford the results of good economic or a good economy, having a strong government, having a police department, hospitals, even the foundations upon which so many of us do rely. And this is the world into which they've fallen. Anecdote, I guess. The movie Vacation, Chevy Chase, I'm assuming people have seen that. And the very first edition of it, there's a scene where they actually stop to ask directions in East St. Louis. Before the 5 minutes are up, the entire vehicle is stripped. It's humorous on the one hand, but it does represent what happens when there's a complete breakdown in civil authority as a consequence of failing to plan and pay attention. What's next? I think we've been over the cooperation standpoint a lot. Without it, you can't survive. In reference to that region of St. Louis, with which I'm very familiar, I was raised there, the other 16 counties and regions, or cities, if you will, work together. Because they work together, they become thriving, and they're growing. Here, the same thing has to be achieved. You've already got a strong foundation, and I'd like to work even more on that, to get out there and meet with each and every one of you, to create new mechanisms for communication, to bring even more people and individuals and institutions into the activity of REGI that will enable us to even grow stronger and get further down the road than what we are right now. This is, I think, a key, and I'm just picking and choosing from Diane's report. There's so much in there that's valuable, it's amazing. To me, a robust economic development organization is absolutely essential. In the absence of this, you still have a multitude of organizations trying to do the same thing, and you diffuse your impact. The goal, of course, is not only that it represents the region, but presents that collective vision to speak in a single voice. All that means is we're out there representing you. We have to have the capacity to do so, which means we're going to have to grow, not only in terms of staffing, but also developing some type of a funding stream. We're going to have to take a look at relationships outside of this region and build strongly on the state and rely upon those partners and the like to help us move forward in a much more aggressive and better fashion than we have been. And again, be there, be available, and be professional. I've been doing this for a very long time, and on many occasions, I'm sure Diane and a few of you can back me up, there's quite a few economic development organizations that aren't. You have to be competent. You can't be unresponsive, and customer service is and always will be a major key. The other key is innovation. That's absolutely essential. In the absence of innovation, by the way, we have the definition in the lower right-hand corner. We took out a few words to make it less lengthy. But in the absence of innovation, you have static. And if static atmosphere is what you want, great. Think back to those abandoned buildings, because it's eventually what's going to happen. I know you've been through all this before, but since I'm new here, I want to try to explain my motivations. I believe the innovation economy is the only way we can go. It's building on what you have, it's expanding on new ideas, and it's moving aggressively into the future. Part of that is doing this municipal forum. We've got to have the individual cities, villages, and the like engaged. The lack of that engagement will be the death knell for any kind of an effort of this nature. There are some strong players in here already. Appreciate and admire the respect that's already, or the support that's already underway. But looking towards the future, we need to have representation from virtually each and every, again, village and municipality that exists in this area. So I'll be out there, I'll be visiting and showing up at your door, I'll be coming around, and any recommendations you have for others, please tell me. I'll be sure to get out there as well. This is a picture of St. Louis. The reason I stuck it up there is because St. Louis is the central place for the region where East St. Louis is located. It's productive, it's keeping its millennials, which, trust me, having been raised in St. Louis, was a tough issue. It took 10 to 15 years. It's a long-term process. In terms of developing their activities, They built upon very strong business retention and expansion policies. They've developed new attraction programs. They have workforce issues. They have innovation centers. I've worked on many of these. But what they have most, again, is a motivated and serious collection of people, institutions, and governments that want to succeed. So at the end of the day, we're not going to have a handle or an arch, but we are going to have success. It'll take a few years, and I think, I hope, at least, that's what you all are looking for, is growth in jobs and investment. That was really it for me tonight. But again, I appreciate you all coming out. And I can talk to you about some anecdotes, but I think right now we'll talk about the questions and the answers. Right?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, at this point, we would like it opened up for questions. Anything is fair game. And also, we would like to give you the opportunity to get involved, okay? And Gus will have a few words about that. But first of all, questions. Yes, sir.
I guess my question is, so how do we get involved and what's the roadmap towards success?
Well, I think Diane laid out a pretty good roadmap for us, okay, of the things we have to do. And certainly this approach of creating an economic development central point, okay, is key to it. And we're in the process of putting that together at this point. It will be our plan to look at each of these opportunities that have been identified and to move forward with them, okay? But it is absolutely essential that we get more of the municipalities and villages involved so that we are better funded, okay? And so that we have everyone working together. And one of the key things that we've talked about is having what we call a balanced business process for deciding what is welcome in this community, all right? And that we want the municipals involved in that process up front, okay? So that they can, in fact, determine that so that we don't have controversy once we have an opportunity. We'll have an approach for handling things, for discussing how to resolve issues and so on. In an open forum, if you will.
Yeah, if I might, is this on? Yeah. If I might, I wanted to suggest, we do have some note cards in the back to get some information from you. Plus, we're going to be having workshops. And what we'd like to do is get you to come back out, or some of you, or anybody you invite, to become engaged. I'm not sure this will work.
Thank you for that question, Terry. Other questions? Gus, you want to?
Are you going to put the recommendations back up?
Sure.
Could you do that, please? As Steve said, the cards in the back will be available. We really would like you to sign a card and certainly indicate your interest in participating, as Terry said. As Steve said, there's going to be additional workshops, and I think and I know as Steve goes out and begins building relationships and networks with all of you, there will be more opportunities for us to be together and to talk about our collective answers to all of these issues, which are very, very complex, as we all know. What we'd like to do for a few minutes here before we end tonight, we'd like you to look at those recommendations and find someone close to you. We are obviously not in an ideal situation for discussion. Take a look at these recommendations, and if you need clarity on any of them, if you have any thoughts about any of them, and if you have any lots of steps along the way where we become engaged and listen deeply. Before we start, however, the reactions that we all have are individual in nature and yet collective in impact. And we all have a choice to look at what we've heard tonight and certainly agree or disagree. The real value in the exercise continuing forward is how much and how willing are we to listen to the other point of view and learn from each other. Because that's the only way it's going to work. We've got to do things differently if we expect different results. So I just offer that as a thought and a perspective, because no one controls your heart and your mind about how you feel in this community except you. And I'm hoping that because we're all connected to this place, either because we live here, or we work here, or both, we all are connected in one way or another. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, and then we're just going to open it up and see if anybody has any thoughts. I know it's 7 o'clock or so, and I know people are really grounded into their seats, but find somebody to have a conversation with about your reactions, and please, it can't be just your wife or your best friend who's sitting next to you. Find someone, introduce yourself, and then we're going to come back in about 2 minutes, and then we're going to get the cards as well, and we're going to just see what people's reactions were to the discussion tonight. So, someone got a clock or a timer? 2 minutes. Find someone and have a discussion. Those are the recommendations. Let us know what your thoughts are. 2 minutes, we're going to come back and post it.
You can leave it up to me because I just don't pass
So, does anybody have any reactions or thoughts about what they heard tonight? Before we start, I would like to just introduce, or at least recognize, 2 people that came in that weren't, they were verbally recognized, but they weren't here to be recognized by us. Pat and Leslie are here. They were one of the original members of the REGI team, and Tom Yankee is back there as well. So again, we appreciate their work and their contributions. So, any thoughts? And again, there is no right or wrong answer. It's a perspective and a point of view. Thoughts? Yes.
So one thing that I think needs to be addressed is the timeline and how are we going to measure our results. And obviously there's a lot of great data, but how do we move this along and know that we're heading in the right direction or the wrong direction?
Thank you. So measurable results, how will we know when we get there? How will we know that? So thank you. Any other comments or thoughts?
Grand Rapids was part of the airport commission, and one of the things that is a little bit lacking, I know the mayor indicated he's going to have some conversation shortly, but we need to recognize the value of having our own airport. You know, jet services or wherever you want to be, it's a diamond in the rough. We need to develop it and put it on the forefront as a location, a destination.
So are you an unrecognized asset at this point you'd like to see leveraged? Anybody else?
You want comments? I think, Nancy and I talked about it a little bit too. Nancy Vandermeer's here from the 70th Assembly, and I'm Scott Kirk from the 72nd, if I haven't met anybody. But We talked a little bit about, some of the presentation and how it is playing out right now in the legislature, the process we're working on, with these things with DMI and Port Edwards, and hopefully trying to do Highway 54 improvements. A lot of those things we're working on, I think you can see wins from the state on, but I don't know if you're going to get to the point where you're going to see the state come through and say, hey, Reggie, here's $100,000 a year to continue somebody to work. So some of the things you'll need from your legislators as you move forward is very targeted, specific needs that you'd like us to try to address through the rules or regulations. Those types of things are going to be bigger wins for you at the state level than a direct funding source. So that just, as we talked a few minutes ago, just trying to figure out those things that we can do. We're open for those suggestions. And if it is airport type funding, or if it is water system type funding to connect sources from Wisconsin Rapids to Rome, or infrastructure projects for road improvements or routes, those are things I think the state will be more willing to help out with. So keep those ideas flowing to us as you go through this process.
Careful for what you wish for.
I know, I always say that.
Any other comments? We're going to take one more before, at least one more.
The upper deck, there's a question.
We got two more. This one, thank you.
For myself, I'm very new to this, so I'm just kind of being introduced to the process, and I guess my impression is that it looks like a good plan, a good outline, but I guess I'm looking at it saying maybe I would like to know some of the specific steps to kind of take it down to another level of detail, it's like what are some specifics now that are going to be done, where this, my impression is that where this is more of a general plan. I might be wrong on this, because like I said, I'm completely new, but that's my impression from what I heard.
Does anybody want to address that? I think there's a response, maybe.
Yeah, I think the response is on your card, give us your name and your interest in participation, and we'll be in touch for workshops and more folks that we can get involved and how do we implement. There's a lot more detail, obviously, that we can't cover in 30 minutes.
Okay.
We're quite willing to share it. Arnie brought up, there was no comment about the rail service. The rail service in this area is a distinct advantage, okay? It's just one of the items that, where do you cut something out? So, there's a lot more detail to share.
That was an excellent question, because in the work over those 3 years was one of the pieces of Future Works recommendation was for these stakeholders to create their plan based on their assets that's specific and unique to this area. So it's called the theory of change model. We didn't want to overload everybody with with terms, etc. We do have a number of building block steps in there that need to be looked at and talked about and addressed if we're going to achieve the bigger picture, which is a community that works well for all.
Okay, great.
Someone up here? No? Any others? Jerry?
Richard and I were talking, and one of the things that we find interesting, or at least fascinating for other communities that perhaps have involved their youth in helping make decisions for the future. So I think one of the comments that we would like to make is, let's make sure that we're involving civics classes, FBLA groups, any of the school groups that might take an interest in this, and really try to study it, uncover it, and maybe share some possibilities.
Excellent.
So you're saying the Nakusa Public Schools would be interested in entertaining a curriculum around this? Good, thank you. Any others? Last call before I turn it over to John. There were those cards, and we hope that you filled one out, and please hand them to the side, or let's put them on the table when you leave. Make sure that we do get them, and I want to turn it back over to John.
As Steve pointed out, if you have entrepreneurial ideas, there's nothing eager a speaker, I think. There's nothing that is exclusive on these cards. Please put your thoughts down, put your questions down. If you're interested in continuing to participate, we want your participation, all right? You obviously got the message that investment is going to be required, angel investment funds to assist entrepreneurs. We need to get the whole package together to be successful. So intellectual property, funding, the whole piece needs to come together for us to be successful in this community with economic development. And we also need to be supporting the businesses that are here and doing it in an aggressive fashion. So you'll be hearing from Steve and the rest of the board, and we thank you for coming out tonight and listening, and we're looking forward to your involvement and participation in the future. Thank you all very much.